Once upon a time, I worked for a social services organization and was lucky enough to work specifically with unaccompanied children from Central America. These are the kids who walk thousands of miles, who cross deserts and traverse forests. Sometimes they travel in packs. Sometimes they travel with adults who are not their parents. Sometimes they travel with a coyote, a paid guide. And sometimes they travel alone. These kids would arrive with a phone number written in Sharpie marker on their forearm, and their vaccination records and birth certificates in a battered Ziploc bag. One of the kids we called El Pequeño Sacerdote, the little priest. He was about 10, and he wanted to pray before everyone had lunch, and he would pray the most beautiful prayers. I remember sitting in a conference room with him and his caseworker and his therapist with his mom on speakerphone. We could not find a viable sponsor in the United States. The meeting was to offer his mother the chance to place him in a longer-term setting with other kids in his situation, or to send him home. The boy and his mother wept and they shouted. He wanted this dream. He wanted to be here, but his mother wanted him home. The day we said goodbye to him, all the other kids and the staff lined up for hugs and high fives. I remember all the things he took back, a mountain of stuff compared to what he had arrived with, including the money and the gifts for his family we weren't supposed to have tucked into his suitcase. I can't imagine what that trip was like for him, the despair for a lost dream, a lost chance, a return to the way things had been all his life. We pick up Cleopas and another disciple on a similar journey. This is the same day the women discovered that the tomb was empty, and we're not sure if these disciples had finally given up hope that Jesus would return, or if they were simply too afraid to stay in Jerusalem. But they are walking 7 miles to a town called Emmaus, and as they walk, they're trying to sort out what has happened. Good Friday seems a long time ago for us, both figuratively and chronologically. But for them, it was only a few days ago that Jerusalem went nuts, and they watched their teacher and friend bear a cross through the streets to a hill outside town where he would indeed be crucified. This grief is fresh. These people are shattered and probably wondering what any of this was even for. This is not the restoration of Israel that they had hoped for. And if we're honest, we're all still waiting for that restoration too. A man appears and he asks them what they're talking about, and they don't know who he is, but they tell him, and then he preaches them a sermon on who Jesus is, and the miles roll on, and the road forks away from Emmaus, and the man seems to want to keep on going, even though it's getting dark. The disciples exhort him to come with them, and he does. In Emmaus, they sit, and their guest takes bread, and he blesses it, and he breaks it, and suddenly their eyes are open, and they see Jesus sitting right in front of them, and then, bam, he's gone. Luke's gospel is often thought of as a social justice gospel because Luke gives importance and voice to those who were marginalized in the time of Jesus. In Luke's gospel, it seems like Jesus is always eating or preparing to eat, usually with the wrong people. And in Luke's gospel, the church is always on the move. Everyone is always going somewhere. Maybe because Luke's vision for a church, because let's be honest, if Luke were dropped out of the sky and set into the pew next to Sophia, he would not recognize this. Luke's vision was a church on the move, a church healing and feeding people, always accompanied by Jesus, even when we can't see him walking with us. Eminent themes in Luke's gospel are hospitality, faithfulness, discipleship, and fellowship, and those are some of the same themes that this community claims and lives out. Luke is writing for a community that was probably made up of mostly Gentiles, one that was probably diverse socially and economically. The community Luke knew would have started to wonder, where in the world Jesus was, why he hadn't come back to claim his followers, why Israel still had not been indemnified. People wondered, well, what should we do in the meantime? And how should we live while we wait? And Luke answers those questions, helping them and us to encounter the kingdom of God, even without expecting it to be completed right in front of us. Luke tells us the kingdom is already here. People are being healed and restored. Each time the Spirit works, the kingdom is made a present reality. In Luke's gospel, the breaking of bread offers a resolution to shattered hope. He breaks bread with thousands in Luke 9. He eats a banquet with tax collectors and sinners in Luke 5. He breaks bread with his friends in Luke 22, and again today in Luke 24. And in a few minutes, we will break bread and share it around a different sort of table, but a table nonetheless. What all of this means is that when we gather and break bread, we are eating a meal of redemptive hope. Jesus promised he would break bread again in the kingdom of God with the disciples, and in Luke 24, he does just that. Luke is telling us that the kingdom is right here. Every one of us here could tell a story about a journey to Emmaus. That time we left the hospital after a loved one had died, how numb we were on the drive home, the cycle of grief we endured, and the way it still lives deep in our hearts. Maybe it's a relationship that ended, how we rattle on, feeling alone and mostly bereft. Or maybe it's about a beloved pet who died. But please don't worry, because I have it on good authority that all dogs absolutely go to heaven, and most of the cats, too. Yes, all of us have walked this road of shattered disbelief. And the good news is that Jesus walked that way with us. We just couldn't see him yet. Our eyes were closed, and we didn't even know it. We live so much of our lives this way, with our eyes closed, hurtling through the days, numbing the pain that is living in 2023 in myriad ways. Praying for Friday, praying for payday, praying for a day that is different than the one that we're living inside of. We come here together and we break bread to remember that we need to open our eyes if we want to see Jesus with us. Luke's gospel has 3 stages of history. The law and the prophets stage bumps right up against the ministry of John the Baptist. The life of Jesus is the center of Luke's history. And the time we live in now is the 3rd stage. This is the time of the church, a continuation of the book of Acts. It is the time when the ministry of Jesus continues through us. I said earlier, we're all waiting for that restoration. And I'll add to that, and I'll let you in on a little secret. We're waiting in the wrong direction. Jesus is waiting on us to reconcile, to invite, to restore, yes, to feed all of the people out there who are hungry for a community like this. The kingdom is already here, and it's evidenced through the healing we experience here. I can't be the only one whose life has been changed, forever altered by St. John's. I'm not sure whatever happened to my little friend. I know he did get home to Guatemala because we spoke to him once or twice. I know he had a dog waiting for him he'd really been missing, and a new soccer ball to kick with the friends he had once left behind. I wonder if in his story, we were but a room in Emmaus, a place where he encountered the risen Christ, along with spaghetti. I think this space, 524 Washington Street, is a room in Emmaus, a stop on a journey, a place where we too come to a table and encounter the risen Christ in communion bread, yes, but also in the ways we treat one another, the justice and the dignity that we strive for, the meals delivered to one another in hard times, and the free ones we offer twice a week to those who are hungry, the celebrations of baptisms and weddings and birthdays, and the times we walk just a little closer together too, when we stand together through unimaginable loss and grief. God longs for us to be restorers, to be agents of hope, the breakers of bread and the sharers of a feast at a table that is already spread. Cleopas and his friend were probably pretty scared. They had no idea what would happen next, now that their world had proved its violent heart in the killing of one who preached peace. I think sometimes, if we're honest, we're scared too. It is wild out there, you guys. In Sunday school here, we teach godly play. And at the end of each story, the storyteller asks wondering questions to the children assembled. We're reaching the end of our story today. And so I wonder where you see yourself in all of this. And I wonder where Jesus is to be found. I wonder who you know that needs a community to belong to, and how you could invite them in. And I wonder if you will, at last, open your eyes.